for organizing a very important workshop. It's a privilege to be here with you all this morning. And like Asba, I want to start by saying congratulations and thank each and one of you for being present today. It's not easy for us as women to juggle so many priorities inside the house and outside the house. And just to make everybody comfortable, as you can see, I have a sick child here who refuses to leave my side. But it's such a privilege to be here. And like Asba said, this is a safe space, also a brave space. That is why I feel brave and safe enough to be here on camera with my child. So I hope everyone makes the best of this opportunity to learn about our legal rights at work. Women's empowerment begins with knowledge. Awareness about legal rights is a first step. It's also about understanding the power and protection these laws offer us. When we women are informed about our rights, then we can make informed decisions. We can protect ourselves from abuse, discrimination, and injustice, and advocate in our interest and our fellow peers' interest. It's astonishing that only 55% of women globally are aware of their legal rights. One in three women encounter legal hurdles in asserting their rights. Empowering ourselves with knowledge of our legal rights is a critical step towards achieving gender equality and social justice. It not only enhances our ability to protect ourselves, but also to strengthen our position within our community, at our workplace, and in our country as a whole. I really encourage everyone here to make full use of this opportunity over here today. Ask your questions, learn as much as you can, and try and practice it, apply it in your everyday lives, be it at home or at the workplace. It is so great for us to have Mr. Satyajit Gupta, who will provide insights into our legal rights, focusing on personal laws, constitutional protections, and recent legal developments in India. On behalf of the US Embassy in New Delhi, I would like to once again thank LedBy Foundation, and a special mention to Asba, who's here, and a special mention to Jasi Purva, who has been leading this program on behalf of the US Embassy in India. Big shout out to two amazing, strong women who are leading this program. Thank you, Mr. Satyajit Gupta, for being here today. Your presence signifies your commitment to leading healthy and productive lives. That applies to all of us. With that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Gupta, and I wish everybody an amazing workshop and a beautiful session, and I hope to stay connected with everybody. Thank you, Asba. Over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And it feels so good to hear you because I know you are really busy with your schedule and with your kid as well, and still you take out time for this drive for making us comfortable with this topic. So thank you so much for joining.
Sorry, I just want to add one more thing, just to give a personal touch. I wish to say that my father was Muslim, so I have half my family and half the women in my family are Muslim. So I want to say that I have an intimate knowledge of the struggles we face, the struggles these women have, the dilemma, the difficult choices that so many women have to make to either work or not work and to really exercise legal rights. So I'm intimately aware of those challenges, and that's why I'm so proud that each and every one of you is here today. And I really hope you take best advantage of this workshop. All the best to everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And absolutely, as Seema ma'am said, that as women, we all have our own challenges, and at the same time, moving towards the workplace, it's not easy. It's not at all easy. It seems, but it's not. So, for this, we have our expert for the day, Satyajit sir, who is also a very big advocate of LedBy Foundation and is contributing to LedBy Foundation in different ways. So, over to you, Satyajit sir.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. I think As Asba recognized, I think it's a Sunday, and for everybody, I mean, Sundays usually for me are actually quite good. But I'm actually, I somehow seem to have, I had double booked myself. So today morning I went for a 5 kilometer run, and after which it's not, I sort of didn't account for this session, but it's absolutely fantastic to be here. As I think Asba would have clarified, I think this session will only focus largely on rights at workplace and not cover other areas such as women's rights under personal laws and various other laws, etc. So I think I don't know. I think I'm just being asked by transcription software what language I'm speaking in. So yeah, just not maybe it's not able to identify. But right. So let me just pull up a few slides if I'm able to share my screen. Just allow me 2 seconds. Um, Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, sir, we are able to.
I'm trying to put it on. Yeah, hopefully. So I think, look, I think when you look at workplace rights at workplace, I think, look, we obviously, as I think it's one of, um, from what I understand, one of LedBy's primary focus is to create space, right, inclusivity, and create space for women at workplaces, and I think, and of course Muslim women at workplaces. So I think it's very important that for the women who have come into the workplace, they understand their rights so that they're able to protect themselves, they're able to ensure that they have a good career and they set a good example, right, for the women who will follow them. I know many women at LedBy were probably the first generation to come into the professional space. I think I've been reading a lot of posts by all of you, including as well by you, also probably talking about how I mean, many of you and many of the LedBy sort of scholars and women who've come through this program and fellowship are the first to come into an organized workplace. I think I should differentiate here between organized and maybe unorganized workforce, because it's not that women in this country have not been working. I think they probably work much harder than many men, um, and we men have the ability to just do a little bit and complain, oh, we've done so much. But women obviously have to have many responsibilities, and they multitask significantly. So keeping that in mind, it's uh, I think while we recognize that the number of women in the workplace is something which is I think uh, very low in the organized space, but in the unorganized space, they're definitely out there. Again, I think we are somewhere limited because the laws typically dictate what happens in organized workplaces. While, of course, laws such as the Prevention of Sexual Harassment law in India and various other laws should also, principally apply to unorganized workplaces. But because unorganized workplaces and workspaces are not regulated, so let's assume you're working in just doing some work from home, or you're doing some, you just you may be maybe you're a cook, you maybe you're a home cook, maybe you're doing some, many women are working in, sort of creating things, and sort of are into their own use their own home spaces to uh, carry out some professional or business activities. So those are obviously, uh, ideally the principles should apply, but because they're not registered, they're not known about, they're not in the government records, if I may say so, those don't get covered. So somewhere also the enforcement of laws are limited to areas where, or spaces where there's regulation. So that's, I think, another limitation that we will have to accept before we move in. But In a professional and in an organized workspace, these are some of the laws I will focus on. And again, I think the laws I will talk about are actually for everybody, whether you're a man, a woman, or you identify yourself as, you have some other identity, or we will not look into what is that. The law basically starts from the premise that it tries to provide an equal treatment for everybody. Hence, these laws would also be applicable. Doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, Hindu, any other religion. Doesn't matter whether you're man, woman. But obviously, I think when we look at minorities, when we look at women, when we look at segments of society which are sort of weaker, and in terms of, and I wouldn't say weaker, but I would probably say they have lesser number, lesser representation. Um, they are the people who probably need the protection more. They need to watch out probably more on what is needed. Now, if you see, sort of the numbers, I understand these are fairly old numbers, 2011 numbers from the government, from a census, where it says the total number of women in the workplace is in rural and urban areas is, urban areas is only 28 million, right? which is which is nothing compared to the 150 million which is reported as the total number of female workers in India. And most people, I mean, most women are probably in the unorganized space. So things like agriculture, things like cultivation, household industry, which is I think not that big anyways. But otherwise, the numbers are in the organized space, such as offices and professional environments, is low, which means that that it's which also means it's more difficult for them to break through, and which also means that the ones who break through obviously initially have to go through a time of upskilling themselves and understanding what are their protections. Now, needs of an employee, right? What does an employee need? I think let's step back and say, you're going into an organization, either a fresh graduate or you're entering the workforce. What do you need? I mean, these are not legal points, but these are things like these could be simple and intuitive things, such as you need training, you need opportunities, you need equal and fair treatment, right? You need safety, protection of your rights, you need fair pay, right? You need, and of course, the very important thing, which is actually not recognized by law as much, but you need work-life balance also. You can't work for, uh, you know, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and have a productive life. So that's definitely something which is needed. So I mean, if you put that in the prism of what we need, let's move forward and see what are the laws, what are the current, and maybe before we go into the laws, what are the sources of these laws? Now, I think if we look at labor and employment laws, globally, they usually draw their genesis from the International Labour Organization, which you would have obviously heard of. It's one of the arms of the UN. And of course, one of the primary documents, which is, sort of like a basic, you may call it the Magna Carta of today, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, these have basic, sort of, um, they recognize the fundamental human rights that people have, right? So, including, sort of rights of people in the workplace, people of equality, of equal pay, etc. Similarly, in the Indian context, of course, one cannot. I mean, the foundation of our republic today is our constitution. Now that recognizes clearly the fundamental rights are, start with equality, equal protection of the laws. Start with, right to life, which includes the right to live a dignified life, and have dignity at every branch of life, which includes dignity in the workplace as well. They also, and fundamental rights, as many of you may be aware, are justiciable rights, which means these are rights which you can go to a court and seek protection for. There are other provisions of the Indian Constitution which include, directive principles of state policy, which are more, guiding, and those also identify that, protection of women, protection of, you know, all segments of society which need, support and protection, and there are fundamental duties as well. Now, many of these, and if you read through and if you read them with each other, talk of, these basic elements of equality, basic elements of that people should have a safe environment, whether they're at work, like, in their whatever sphere of life they're in. And these, I think, form the bedrock of laws. Both the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a global document. The Indian Constitution is of course for our country. But if you look at them, there are a lot of common themes, and which I will, now move into the different laws which currently exist. And also there are certain laws which are about to come up, and they have been passed, but they're not being implemented, but they have, similar requirements. Now, if you look at, I think I'll briefly go into the speak a little bit about laws, and then I think in order to give you a little bit of a um, maybe a few practical tips, I'll move into that segment. So, I won't go, read through each of them, but I will just sort of highlight that, look, the labor laws in India talk of, are segmented in different spaces. There are laws which speak about working conditions, which include your Factories Acts, your Shops and Commercial Establishments Act, which deals with various offices, etc. These are all, in a sense, combined into the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, which is part of the labor codes which government has passed, Parliament has passed in 2020. There is, of course, safety and protection, which is of women in the workplace, which is addressed by the Sexual Harassment of Women Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act, which many of you may have heard of as the POSH law. There are health security for women, which is covered under, especially women who are becoming sort of expanding their families by way of either having children themselves, adopting, or being commissioning mothers. There are sort of social security laws which include the employees state insurance, which includes employee provident fund, and finally the very important ones, the fair pay ones, which talk of the equal remuneration, and of course, and the ones which talk of payment of wages, the Minimum Wages Act and the Payment of Bonus Act. Now, all of these laws have a fundamental, um, sort of thread which runs through them, which is it looks at equal opportunity and equal protection and equal treatment for everybody across the board, whether or not they're men, women, whichever segment of society they come from. And of course, there are challenges in implementing some of these acts, and sometimes the challenges come from the fact that the documentation, that the policies, now the laws exist, and they are uh, you know they exist across the board for everybody in every company. But if you look at each workplace, usually everything is handled by way of an employee handbook, or an employee, or a employer policy, or a company policy. Now, those in many cases are either inconsistent with the law, or they are not, and most times inconsistent in terms of their adverse. So they are, let's say, the law, provides certain protections, or law states that you need to give certain amount of leave, or you need to provide certain protection. The company policies are usually, don't follow that lead, and that results in, obviously, yeah, certain uh, employees feeling, and especially the employees who don't have a big say in these policies, feeling discriminated against. And in many cases, I would also go on to say, and I'm sure many of you have seen uh, cases such as that. The law may be available. The law is, of course, available if you look for it, but the policies are very difficult to come by. Company has a policy, company, when they make you sign your employment agreement or your offer letters, etc., it states, look, everything will be as per policy. Later, you can't find the policy. The policies are guarded very zealously by either HR or different organization management, and you only find out about a policy when, let's say, the policy is applied against you, or in a situation where it, you know, by the which time it's too late for you to understand and apply yourself and ensure that you act as per what is required. So I think while I would definitely suggest that each of you look up these laws, but I would also suggest that in terms of my practical tips which will come up, is that you please look at the policies applicable to your workplace and try and assess that against what you maybe may have heard from me, and of course what you will read up, I'm sure, after this presentation. In case you haven't, I'm sure many of you are also aware of the fact that this is something which is important, which is why you're here. So let me move on. Now, when you look at the sources of, and I mentioned this already, that look, frankly, the two very important things for you to see in a workplace is your offer letter or employment agreement and your company's policies. Now, again, these, you could take this as tips, you could take this as suggestions, you could take this as advice, but please make sure of a few important things. Please make sure you have a written agreement with wherever you work. It's very, very important because it, at least assures you of the basic premise of the employment per se. If something goes wrong, or let's say tomorrow your company is in a difficult situation, or in it, or maybe there's some rights of yours which are affected, unless you have an employment agreement with your employer, with your company, you will have nothing to bank upon. You will not be able to evidence. Very difficult for you to evidence then that you have been you've been employed with this company. Uh, there are other pieces of evidence as well which you could look for. These could include your pay slips. These would include other letters periodically which you may get. It may be a promotion letters, increment letters, you know um, other regular documentation. Your company may be showing you, obviously, at the end of the every year, a form 16. So those are also important, but the fundamental bedrock of the relationship is your employment agreement or offer letter, whatever it's called in your company. It's extremely important that, look, the basic terms such as what is your salary, what is your wages, what is your work timings, what is your exact, maybe your scope of work. If there's a particular tenure for this employment, is it a fixed term employment or is it an open-ended employment? Those should all be captured there in your employment agreement offer letter. When you receive your offer letter, do look at all of these elements. If you find it something is not covered, something which has been discussed, verbally agreed is not covered, please do request them to include it. The second element is, of course, your company policies. Like I mentioned, these are typically very difficult to come by for most employees. However, these have much more, detail about, so when you look at things such as what are your work timings, what is your leave. Now, all of those are typically covered in a leave policy. In your, there could be an employee handbook which would definitely cover work timings and things like that. Um, Things such as what would happen if you work overtime. Now, many of these elements, like I said, there are overlaps with law, because and sometimes these are expected to be over and above what is the protection provided under law. But it's very important that you do access them once you join an organization and do look through them. And if there's something which is inconsistent, you should point it out to HR, stating that, look, this is not as per law, or what protection the law provides. But it's very important for you to know about it and be aware of uh, what these policies state. Just a second. The next element is that, I mean, what I would like to cover are potential threats, right, for women at a workplace. Now, these are, again, like I said, not so much legal, but primarily points which, we typically see when we look at complaints and, issues that women face in the workplace. It could be something basic such as gender discrimination. So people may say, look, we will only hire men for this role. It could be harassment, it could be sexual harassment. It could be generally, sort of just abuse or non-sexual as well. There could be, of course, again, gender discrimination. Many cases leads to wage gaps, pay disparities. There are biases based on race, religion, etc., both in terms of hiring as well as thereafter once somebody is hired in terms of giving them promotions, bonuses, increments, non-compliance of with women-centered centric laws and policies. So many companies, in spite of many of these protective laws being there, companies may not implement them. So it's important to, of course, for us, each of us, to look out for these things. And ultimately, basic things like every organization is supposed to have, even though it may be there and some elements may be there under law or not, but issues such as a grievance redressal committee or a forum, basic security measures. So, for example, if you're working in night shifts, etc., what is the, you know, uh, how is your protection assured? What is your transportation uh, and security measures taken? All of these have to be looked at, and these all result in, and these many of these, or rather, I would frankly say almost all of these are somewhere protected under, and legislated by, under and covered under different laws.
Hi,
Now,
Satyajit. I have a question here. So, as you
yeah.
said that wage discrimination. So, wage discrimination is always there for women and a man. If a man is doing same kind of a job as women, so men always get paid higher. So, how are we going to know? Because salary discussion is something very confidential, right? So, how do we know as a, female, and what is the approach to, let our employer know that it should be same for, men and women?
Hmm. Okay. Okay. I couldn't catch your name, but I'll come to your question. Thank you so
Okay.
much for asking
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I just have two slides, and then I wanted to actually, I'm running a bit through the slides, but I just want to give time for people to ask
Sure,
questions.
sure, sure.
So yeah, so I think and I think these couple of slides are more about what we can do and what we, suggestions, I would say, steps and strategies. Now, the first step is obviously for you to know what are your rights, and what are your rights under law, what are your rights under your policies, what is there in your employment agreement, what is there in your offer letter, what is, all of that information, knowledge, as the old adage goes, is power. So you need to have that knowledge, and for that you can read up, you can ask questions, you can uh, you know a lot of online research is possible. There's a lot of material available. You can read the law itself, and there are different, for many of these acts, many of these laws, there are simple reckoners, etc., available. So that's definitely out there. So know about it, and of course, your company policies and employment agreement, you must read your own employment agreement. Second is speak up and seek support. Many times, we don't ask because we are afraid that, okay, what will people think? But even simply asking your colleagues, maybe you join a new company, you have, obviously there would be more experienced colleagues who are working there, to ask them, right? I mean, where do I find the policy? People may not tell you in the first, when you join. People may tell you, oh, we will tell you later. Your manager may tell you, your management may tell you, but do ask, and ask your colleagues, ask your manager, keep following up. It's important that you are aware of what the terms of your employment are. Three, document your grievances and record evidences. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that, if you have an issue, if you have a grievance, do put it down in writing. Maybe you initially want to speak about it, but then after that, do keep it, maybe draft a short letter or an email and share it with your manager or your HR, whoever is the relevant right person. And if there's, let's say, something you find which is, problematic, do record it in terms of, now I wouldn't suggest obviously recording any conversations or taking unauthorized copies of documents, but you should, if it pertains to you. So let's say if it's your wage pay slips, your pay slips are your pay slips. You should have, absolutely have absolute right to take them. And if your company tells you, no, no, this pay slip is only for our system, then you must insist that, look, this is something they provide to you because it pertains to your work, it pertains to salary you get, right? So similarly for employment agreement, I have heard of many cases where people make employees sign an agreement and then they keep it in their custody. Now those are absolutely, things that you must, gently and if required forcibly push back on. Fourth is, and important, and perhaps it's something which I don't want to come across as sort of, I don't know, in any way a sort of lecture, but in a sense, consciously reflect and check your emotions. And just in the terms of that, basically, when you're dealing with your employment and when you're dealing with your employer, if you are more, if you're thoughtful, if you think through and you react and you present your case, you may, I would say, in all probability, do a better job than if you just put forward an emotional response. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't get emotional. That doesn't mean we shouldn't get emotional if that, if need be. But it's only from the perspective of that would we want, our arguments or our suggestions or our point to be taken on an emotional, uh, tangent, or would we want it to be taken as a professional employee, as a professional viewpoint? And this is, again, I'm coming from the perspective that many times any issues which women bring up are dismissed with the thought that, oh, it's by lady, so, she's emotional, she's, not thinking rationally, which is absolutely incorrect. Maybe somebody may express emotion in the way they communicate, but I think the point does not go away. So I think it's very important that we do have a think and do go back with some arguments, thoughts, justification for whatever we're asking for, and that is presented, and then the next steps are taken. Now, I think before I come to questions, I just wanted to sort of share that, look, there are many um, points and there are many things that I've suggested to you, which, there are some bits which you can do yourself, right? Which is, reading up about things, sharing, the thoughts and insights and questions and getting um, help and guidance from your colleagues, friends, family, whoever you're close to. And those can all be done by yourself. And I think you should do those before you get into any seeking external support. But where you do see something going, things are out of control, or you're not able to get help, or or things are extreme, and they are the there's no bargaining uh, position that you have. Clearly, you need to then present it and you need to bring it up before authorities. So it could be, for example, case of a case of a unfair or wrongful dismissal. It could be the case of your salary not being paid. It could be the case of employment benefits not being paid. Now these all have consequences under law, and while you may try all the various steps of reconciliation or trying to get it by requesting, but sometimes you may have to go to and seek external support. And of course, similarly for cases where there's any sort of violence or abuse, you shouldn't be afraid to seek, and you should seek external and professional help, whether it's legal or whether it's, a lawyer's help or a counselor's help, or, or maybe going to the police if required, because it's very important that, we all understand that, okay, look, there are certain areas where we can build up knowledge and deal with things, but sometimes it may be extreme, so we may not have the time to build up that knowledge and you know do it. We may have to take somebody's help to expedite and make sure that our case is heard, and we are in a position to protect those rights without there being too much lapse of time or damage already being done. There are many organizations, I've named some here, but please don't take this as the gospel. Obviously, there are the National Commission for Women, which is there. It's a government body. You may have heard of it. The State Commission, similarly. There are legal support groups such as the Lawyers Collective. I mean, it's an NGO which provides legal help. There are many other NGOs. There's an NGO called Nyay, for example, which provides simple, ready reckoners on many laws. And then, of course, ultimately, there's the government as well, right? So you could go to the Labor Ministry. Labor Ministry has appointed, and the government has appointed labor officers, conciliation officers in every districts, and all the small to large cities. And you can, there are many areas where you may need to reach out to the government, and the government will and is absolutely fully empowered to take action. So I think I will quickly take a pause, and I think I will, of course, address, I think, the first question, which I think came from one of our friends here. Um, I think she asked about the wage gap, etc. And the wage gap is definitely there. I would completely agree with her. The wage gap is there everywhere in any sort of area you go to, and perhaps even more so for women who are coming into the workplace for the first time, because frankly they're coming in for an opportunity, and so then they don't really push for, and they have no, probably they don't have a um, any sort of market benchmark to look at. But uh, uh, I think the question which our friend posed was that, look, what can we do? Because salaries are ultimately extremely personal, confidential, and how do we find out now? And how do we tell our employer that you must pay us equal pay? Now, telling the employee you must pay equal pay, etc. So that's under law, right? So that's something which you can you can clearly say. But I think important point is to state. I think you're trying to say something.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. The important point is to find out what is the salary. I mean, you may not be able to find out the exact salary maybe that the male colleague is getting, but you
Mm-hmm.
can if you ask around. Let's say you're working in the just an example, the IT sector, you would know, right? I mean, and not only you,
Mm-hmm.
but your colleagues and your
Everyone, right?
friends in that space would know that what is the, let's say, your entry level role in a particular domain, what is the entry level salary, or what is the salary after 2 years, 3 years. Now, uh, it's
And
it's
yeah, and to add on this point, even what I feel is, being a woman, a female person, you have other responsibility too. So I think females are the one. I'm not being feminist here, but female are the one who plays a lot of role, not their professional life, also their personal life also. So what I see, being a mother, being a wife, you have much more responsibility. But again, in the job also, they do a tremendous job. So I think people should consider this. That's what I, because fighting for yourself is never bad. You can always fight for yourself and your rights. But people should also understand that being a woman, what all the things they are facing in their day-to-day life, but still they are performing just like a female employee, or even in some cases like more than that. And even
right.
I have seen nowadays, women are losing their job once they come back from the, their maternity leave. So this is really bad, because after coming from a very that situation, you are leaving your child behind, which is now just 6 months, And after leaving your child at home, when you come to office and people say, see, this is your 2 months pay, take it and leave the job. So this is very painful because, ladies are also facing postpartum. So that is also issue. I don't know why people are being very, and this is the real example I'm sharing with you with one of my friend. So I thought of sharing with this forum.
No, sure. I think these are very and these definitely, I agree with you, do happen. The law actually, unfortunately, protects you only during, your maternity, and while and possibly people may wait for a month or two, and then because a lot of women also, sometimes they need to take may need to extend the leave a little bit. But I think thereafter, many women are let go of. Uh, I think there are statistics also around the fact that in many spaces, the number of women who enter the workplace, the workforce, is probably comparable to men in some sectors, but definitely there is that period when they get married and then they have children, where they are sort of in some sense forced to leave the workplace, and then the re-entry is extremely difficult, right? So I think that's something which is an unfortunate reality. Um, I think, look, should the law protect for a longer period? Perhaps yes. Should we have, I think you mentioned an interesting point that, look, pay gap, while, you would love to fight, I'm sorry, not you, but women, you agree that women should fight, but it should be, it's something which there should be prescriptions from the law. It's
Mhm.
there. But the point also is, there is an existing law, but the implementation of the law is something, the lawmakers will not know unless or until we point out, or somebody points out, right? So whether it's a man or a woman, if he or she feels that, look,
See,
there is a pay gap, they should bring it up.
okay, another case I would like to highlight here. So, I faced some issue where in one of the organization when they where they forced me to resign, right? That you need to resign now or we'll put you on PP without any, feedback or constructive feedback or discussion. And there I actually, fight for my rights with the organization, and then I got a secure job on the same company. So my question is, but I was also afraid to go on a legal side because going to, send them legal notice and everything. So this is also a tiring process for that person who is going through that situation. You're getting me?
Mhm.
So these are
Right.
the things I think, you know, people know their rights, people want to fight. Maybe they are not getting that support to go legal for the organization because, see, the organization is you know, it's like very big, and you are these individual fighting for your rights with the organization, so it is not an easy task to fight with the organization. So people, what people think that, okay, let's leave it here, this company is not the end of the world, we can find a job somewhere else. So this is what people do, but they don't fight for themselves.
You're right. You're right. And I would I would agree with you, and but also say that, look, ultimately, um, I mean, you know each section of society which comes into, let's say, the workplace, uh, initially has to, there is a period when there's a lot of friction, and there's a lot of, more of a struggle, right? So I'm sure, um, you know whether it's women or and women as a whole,
Yeah,
I'm sure there was
anyone.
struggle. Then there's I mean, I'm sure Muslim women, then there's has a minority within a minority, there's also a struggle. A lot of You're absolutely right. A lot of people will leave any organization where they face issues, and they'll try to move. They try to take the path of least resistance and move to an organization which may not be, which may be slightly better, right? Does it mean that that organization protects them completely? Maybe not, but perhaps, it's a lesser of two evils, right? So you will move to an organization where, okay, instead of why pick up a fight, let me just go somewhere else and work, and let's see, right? If they also create the similar issue, then we will see. Uh, and definitely that also comes from the fact that exercising your legal rights and pushing for your, sort of legitimate due is tiring, is difficult. And I think you've also clearly stated that, look, being a mother, wife, and there are obviously many competing priorities, right? I mean, if you and I'm sure you also don't get the support maybe at home that you would want to get, right? I mean, if you go and tell your husband that, look, I'm fighting for my rights in the organization, many husbands will probably tell you that forget it, "Well, who told you to go and work, just leave it," or whatever. Or, I mean, nobody, or very few people would encourage you. Let's just suffice it to say, maybe your friends would, maybe close relatives might, but it's difficult to find that support. And which is where, perhaps you can, you know uh, reach out to your networks, whether it's a network such as LedBy, or whether it's a network, any other network that you have for support. You would need that support, because if you plan to go legal, or if you plan to go, or even, not even go fully legal, but you plan to bring up an issue, please do expect that it's going to be difficult. There's no issue that you will deal with which will be, like, you present a section from the law and the manager next day says, no, no, you're absolutely right, it was my fault, I'm sorry. Nobody admits to mistakes, and least of all your manager, right? So that's clearly out there. The objective of this session is obviously not to sort of just suggest that all of you go and pick up a fight tomorrow in your workplace or wherever, but that it's important for you to start thinking of it from this prism. Like I said, many people, when they start a career or when they get into a new space, the level of comfort to pick up an issue or even obtain that knowledge is not there. So I think that is where I think I would say, I mean, what I wanted to concentrate on. And initially, the description of the session was very wide. It said rights of women everywhere, and I said, look, that is one is, of course, I may not be the right person to provide that, and that's impossible to do in maybe half an hour, 1 hour. But we are clearly saying that what are the rights of women in the workplace, and just being aware. So I think the first stage is awareness, and I think, Wahida, I think I sense you have a lot of awareness, but um, and maybe many others do. So maybe my objectives and effort may be misplaced, but I feel that it's something that even if you are, there are only 29, 20, I mean 28, leaving me aside, definitely many more people need to be aware of it. So I will sort of stop here, but back to, I think there's some people who've raised their hands. I will move on to a few other questions, but thanks so much for sharing your thoughts, Aida.
Thank you for your time, Satyajit. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you so much. I think somebody called Zeba has raised their hand. Do we
Yes,
have
sir.
to
Am I
say?
audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you. Good morning. I am a Muslim woman and I wear hijab and I had a baby. In my journey, I have had an experience of a workplace asking me to remove my hijab. And of course, hijab is my identity, and not only me, but there are women who would like to cover more than a hijab, and they are definitely skilled and they do want an opportunity. So either you have been forced to wear hijab or compromise with your hijab or look for somewhere else. So is there any law which protects our identity?
So the law does protect, the law protects us in terms of professing our religion, and these are religious markers. But you also must be aware, many of you must be aware, that this was recently litigated in Karnataka, where the government had banned the use of wearing of hijab by, I think, schoolgirls, maybe, if I'm not wrong. And the court, in
Yes.
a split verdict, said, and actually said something like hijab is not, and they took some different viewpoints and somehow came out with this. quite a strange finding that look, hijab is not equal to professing. Um, though they were given other examples, such as obviously, for example, let's say for Sikhs, the wearing of the turban, for example, is professing, right? For Sikhs, carrying of kirpan, of course, it's a it's now a. In fact, it's to the level that now you're even on a um, even on a commercial air flight, you can seek a permission to carry the kirpan. Now they may not be permitted to carry it, on board, but I think that being there, and similarly, even in workplaces. So recently, in the company I work in, I was asked this question that there was a Sikh employee and he's asked to carry his kirpan because it's a it's a marker of his religion, and he's promised that okay, look, he will obviously not carry it onto the floor because they know that may be a bit adventurous, but he wanted to bring it in and keep it, maybe in his locker or something like that. So, so just to answer your question on the hijab, there is of course a lot of controversy, but I would say, it's only a matter of time before it's settled. I think this will, definitely move, and there will be different, I hope there'll be some more sensible viewpoints. The point very clearly is that, okay, if you, I mean, let's say, uh, if there are considerations such as, okay, uh, for somebody who wears the hijab, can that person be, if necessary, if he or she has to go through, say, security, airports, or any sort of areas, can they be, frisked, of course, by maybe by women, and definitely by women, etc. Or if they want to wear something more, it's absolutely, I think, and in many countries around the world, it's quite clear that look, um, wearing of hijab or wearing of your religious markers or whatever you want to clearly do, as long as it doesn't impact your work, should be it should be fine. But I think, unfortunately, I don't know, Ziba, where you're based, but in certain parts of, I mean, in most part of India, after that Karnataka judgment, that view, people have almost believed, I mean, created that view that look, hijab is not is something that people can just tell you to take off or something. So, but definitely the constitutional right is there. That particular judgment was for school children in particular state. So wherever you are, you can definitely pick it up if you, in case you want to, send in, wherever you're working, you want to bring it up as a constitutional issue. That's definitely, that protection is something that you have.
Thank you, sir. Is there any particular specific law which points out to this, or should I, keep it in mind in case if I'm trying to put across my request to the workplace?
Yeah, so I think I will share these provisions, etc., with Asba, etc. So we will circulate a short note afterwards. This is there in the constitution, so there's specific provisions which deal with protection of the right to profess your religion, and these markers, etc. So we'll share it, and hopefully Asba can then share it with the people who attended this session.
Thank you so much.
Problem.
So we are on time and we'll be able to take one last question. If anyone is having any question related to anything, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to unmute yourself. And yeah, it's your last chance right here. So if
I mean, for today, if people have other questions, feel free to reach out. I know there was somebody, I think Hira, who had already put a question on the group, and I think she's got her hand up. Please go ahead, Hira. Hope I've pronounced your name right.
Yes, it is here only. So hi, okay. So I will be starting from my brief of my experience, what I have faced in my first job. Okay, so since we are from technical background and probably we have lesser understanding of HR policies and everything, right? Because we have not studied that in our graduation and everything. So because so obviously, and the experiences which we have in our first jobs are uh, mostly new to us, and like it is different being a fresher, right, and being an experienced individual, experienced worker. So what I had faced was traumatizing for me. So I had obviously, after being through that phase, I have learned a lot. But uh, like my question is that how to, obviously, like at that point, Wahida also shared that she was a part, like she had been forced to resign. But there are like forced resignations are not just one type of resignations. Like mostly there are situations, or there are ways or scenarios in which you are, the path is made for you so that you resign yourself, right? So this kind of situation happened on me. I was put on PIP, like as if I was being asked to leave myself. Like besides, uh, rather than they themselves forcing me resign. So in that kind of situation, I kind of uh, felt that I had lesser understanding. I should be more aware. I should have been more aware while joining the organization, like reading the work culture and everything. So that was my loophole that I thought at that time. But going further, because we are probably 1 or 2 or 3 years of experienced individuals, and we have a less understanding of HR policies, like I have said. So how to make sure in future, like what are the ways, what are the steps that we can take before joining any organization? Especially, I'm not talking about the big fours or the organized ones, right? I'm talking about the startup individuals, because these are the places, broadly, where mishaps happen, like as per my knowledge and experiences. So how can we prevent that, or what are the steps that we can take?
Sure, Hira. So I would say, look, and I can take a session on PIPs because that's something I administer a lot of PIPs, as legal, because HR puts a lot of, and managers put a lot of people on PIP, and in many cases, performance improvement plan is seen. And in fact, somebody shared with me some podcast which said PIP is just a way for people to, like you said, ask people to leave. But I mean, if you look at it, when it was started, was PIP meant only for people to, exit people? No. But the point is, ultimately, anything, a performance improvement, which otherwise has a positive connotation, can also be, sort of in some way misused by somebody. So I would say, look, just to answer your question, one is, of course, in your case, you've gone through it. So I'm sure whichever organization you now join, you will try and find out, through friends or whatever, colleagues or people who worked there. But I would say two, three things. One is, of course, please reach out to, I mean, if you're joining in your organization, um, do two, three things. One is, of course, if the organization is in any way well known, then you'll be able to find reviews of it on Glassdoor, Fishbowl, places where people put feedback. They may be anonymous feedback, and many of those may be incorrect also, but you'll get a general sense. Two is, of course, the best sort of ambassadors I feel for any organization are people who worked there and left, right? Because they have gone through it, they've gone through the experiences, they have, gone through maybe positives, some of them may have gone through negatives, but they would have, it's a lived experience for them, right? So, like just as an example, you had a bad experience with a particular organization. Now, tomorrow, if somebody reaches out and if you've spent enough time, you can give them that, okay, look, in your case, maybe because, the work may be great, but look, these are the areas that you should be watching out for. So the red flags or, or things to watch out for are only things which, like you said, people who worked on those organizations may be aware of. And finally, I would say, look, you know, uh, sometimes if you have doubts, questions, do ask them upfront, right? I mean, obviously, when somebody's hiring you, they will obviously, it's sort of the pre-honeymoon period or something, people are obviously going to be nice to you, and they may give you, I mean, they may or may not give you the right answer. But I think if you ask questions, at least they see you as somebody who's aware, I think, or who wants to be aware, or who's, who's vigilant. I think employees who are seen as vigilant, I have usually seen that, because from a personal experience, when I do deal with employees like that, um, I see even HR, even managers are very careful around them, right? They don't want to, sort of, they, even if they do try and do, like maybe um, try and exit those employees, they will have to be more careful. They'll have to, really work on their, um, really work on the method, and do much more than that. So I would say, just to answer your question, if you're looking at, look at external reviews, look at, reviews that people would have posted about the organization, and reach out, and secondly, reach out to ex-employees. I would say that in most cases, you'll get a very good, or a fairly good understanding of what the organization is all about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with this, we are about to end this session. We are 5 minutes over time, but thank you so much to the audience for being so interactive and being so vocal about your doubts, about your queries, and to know about your legal rights as well. And special thanks to Satyajit sir, obviously, for taking out time out of his busy schedule and arranging this workshop for us and making us realize that it's really important for us to know about our legal rights, especially at the workplace. And since we are moving ahead with this workshop, I would really appreciate that if any one of you have any doubt or query further, you can reach out to Satyajit sir. I have shared his email with you. And yeah, with this, we are ending our session. Thank you so much once again for joining us, and see you soon next time.
Thank you all. Bye bye.